Hi everyone! The story yesterday was Little Red Riding Hood, and it comes from a place called Germany. The place the story today comes from is China. I think a lot of us have heard that word before. This right here, this very large country, is China, and over here was Germany from last time. I'm sure most of you know the story of Little Red Riding Hood very well. Well, keep that story in mind while I read this story today. The story today is called Hugu Po. A long time ago, in rural southern China, there lived a mother and her two young daughters. Xing was the eldest daughter, and Li Hua was the youngest. Xing, Li Hua, and their mother raised silkworms and sold their silk at the local market. One sunny fall morning, the girl's mother set off to the local market to sell the silk thread they had spun. However, on this particular occasion, she had decided to leave some silk thread behind so that she could make 2 new silk dresses for her daughters. Before the girl's mother left, she left them strict instructions to stay inside the house. "Do not go outside," the mother said to the girls. "I have heard rumors that Hu Gupo has come down into the foothills. She is a tiger that disguises herself as an old woman and tries to trick people. Please latch the door as soon as I leave." "We will not go outside," promised Xing. "I will lock the door, and we will spend our time cleaning a house." "We will be right here waiting for you," promised Li Hua. And so the mother kissed her daughters and disappeared into the early morning mist that was rising up from the warm earth. Immediately, the 2 girls set to work. They scrubbed the floor and dusted all the nooks and crannies of the small farmhouse. It was almost midday by the time they were finished. The sun was shining brightly and the birds were chirping loudly when the girls heard a knock at the door. "Do not answer the door," said Xing to her sister. "I will find out who it is." Xing stood in front of the locked door and asked, "Who's there?" "Hello, my dear," said a voice that sounded as ancient as the hills. "I have been walking for many miles. I wonder, could you spare a cup of water?" Xing was perplexed. She knew that she should not open the door, but somehow she felt that this old woman, for an old woman it appeared to be, was in need of help. "I cannot open the door," explained Xing, "but I can pass a cup of water through the open window." "Thank you, my dear," replied the somewhat croaky voice. "You are very kind." Xing filled a cup of water from the bucket that contained drinking water from their well. "Here you are," she said as she passed the cup through the open window. The old woman now stood before the window. She took the cup in her old wrinkly hand and drank from it. When she was done, she handed the cup back to Xing. "How sweet your well water is," said the old woman. "Thank you," said Xing. As she spoke, Xing looked more closely at the old woman. Just like her hands, her face was old and wrinkly. However, the woman had the most peculiar golden amber eyes that Xing had ever seen. "I don't suppose you have a little rice to spare?" asked the old woman. As it happened, Li Hua had just cooked rice for lunch. "Yes, we have some rice we can give you," shouted Li Hua, as she eagerly placed them in a small porcelain bowl. Then she rushed to the window and handed the old woman the bowl and some chopsticks. The old woman looked at Li Hua and licked her lips. "Why, thank you, my dear," said the old woman, all the while staring intently at Li Hua. "I don't suppose you would let me sit for a minute or two while I eat this delicious rice?" "Of course you can," exclaimed Li Hua, and before Xing could stop her, Li Hua ran to the door, unlocked it, and opened it. In the blink of an eye, the old woman was in the house and sitting at the kitchen table. It was as if she had appeared by magic. Xing began to feel alarmed. "Are you all here alone?" asked the old woman. "Yes," replied Li Hua. "Our mother has gone to sell the silk thread our silkworms produce. She told us to stay inside for safety. And that is what we had done," continued Li Hua proudly. "I see," replied the old woman. "You are very wise girls. There are all kinds of dangers in the outside world." "Well, as soon as you have finished your rice," interrupted Xing, "I'm sure you will want to be on your way." "I am almost finished," replied the old woman, who, despite her words of praise, did not seem to like eating rice. "There are only 2 more things that I need." "Oh, what are they?" asked Li Hua. Xing guessed the answer just as the cunning old woman uttered the words. "2 young girls," explained the old woman. Once again, as if by magic, the old woman's movements were quick and sudden. She produced a sack, and before Xing could stop her, she snatched Li Hua and placed her inside it. "You are older," announced the old woman, "and probably not very tasty. I am not sure that I want the trouble of carrying you to the mountains." As the old woman was speaking, Xing reached for some of the spun silk thread that her mother had left behind. It had been spun and wound in the small branch of a mulberry bush. Xing secretly placed it inside the pocket of her dress. Xing had also decided that she would not let the old woman leave without her. "I want to be with my sister," replied Xing. "Very well," said the old woman. "Into the sack you go." and in an instant, Ashing found herself stuffed inside the sack beside her sister. It was clear to Ashing that the old woman had remarkable strength. She carried them with the relative ease. After a while, the old woman stopped and placed the sack containing the two girls on the ground. Moments later, the sisters could hear someone or something noisily drinking water. As this was happening, Ashing whispered to her sister to be quiet. Then she used the mulberry branch that held the silk thread to poke a hole in the sack. What she saw scared her half to death. Instead of an old woman, there was a tiger sitting on the edge of a large glistening lake. The old woman was really Hugu Po. Incredibly, instead of continuing onward, the tiger lay down in the afternoon sunshine and went to sleep. While the tiger slept, Ashing slowly pulled at the hole in the sack until it was wide enough for her to crawl through. She motioned to her sister to quietly follow her. The girls crept toward the sleeping tiger. Ashing reached for the silk thread inside her pocket. Then, using the thread, the girls tied together the tiger's front and back legs. Just as they were finished, the tiger woke up and roared loudly. The tiger tried to free itself, but the yards of silk thread that had been wound around its legs held fast. The girls ran like the wind back to their small farmhouse in the foothills. They hurried into their house and slammed the door and locked it. When their mother finally returned home, she hugged her daughters tightly. "We told you that we would be here waiting for you," said Ashing and Li Hua together. At the beginning of the story, the girl's mother went to the market to sell some thread, and she gave strict instructions. Strict means you must follow these things, do what I say. She gave strict instructions to the girls not to leave the house. And did they listen to those instructions? They did. They didn't leave the house. But she also gave them instructions to latch the door. That means keep it locked. And did they follow those instructions? They did not, and that is where the problem was caused. How does the old woman trick the girls into getting inside the house? Well, first she asked for something small, and then she asked for something else small, the rice, and then she said, "Well, is it okay if I sit down with you?" And that's how she got in. So who was that woman the whole time? So who was that old woman really the whole time? It was Hugu Po, remember? That tiger. Do you see how these two stories of Hugu Po and the Little Red Riding Hood could be connected? There's a reason why these two stories are together. So I can think of a couple reasons why they are similar. One, that there was a young girl who didn't listen to their mother's instructions. Their mother's instructions were there to keep them safe. The little girl didn't listen, and then trouble happened. There was also something similar, that there was a creature or an animal that had disguised themselves as an old woman. Now, I don't know if Hugu Po's plan was to eat the girls just like the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood, but either way, it was not good news for the girls. Just like the last story, the main bad character in this story is sly, but in this story, they use the word cunning, which also means sly, or to do something to trick someone. Now, I'm going to read a couple sentences, and we will decide if this is cunning or not. The first one. One sunny fall morning, the girl's mother set off to the local market to sell the silk thread that they had spun. That's not very cunning. No. Number 2. The tiger known as Hugu Po pretended to be an old woman so that it could get inside the house and capture the girls. That is cunning. That's tricking. Number 3. My cousin pretended that he did not know how to wash dishes so that my brother would do it for him. I would say that's pretty cunning. That's tricking someone. Number 4. My aunt brought me soap when I was not feeling well. That's not very cunning. All right, as always, thank you for learning and listening with me. I will see you next time with another story. Take care.